Good to go, guys? I now reconvene the regular council meeting to order for Monday, January 12th, 2022. Before we get going, I'd like to acknowledge that this council meeting is being held on the homeland of the Tanaka people. I see we have some people in the gallery, so welcome to the public attending in the gallery tonight. First up, can I get a motion to adopt the agenda of the regular council meeting of Monday, January 22nd, 2024? Mover, Councillor Popoff, Councillor Stetsky. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Can I get a motion to adopt the following minutes? Regular council meeting of Monday, January 8th, 2024. Special council meeting of Wednesday, January 10th, 2024. Mover, Councillor Ray, Councillor Peabody. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. First up tonight, we have a public hearing. This public hearing is being convened pursuant to Section 465 of the Local Government Act to consider an application to the Provincial Agricultural Land Commission to exclude land from the Agricultural Land Reserve pursuant to the Agricultural Land Commission Act on behalf of the owners of the subject lands. This public hearing is being held in person and electronically, with residents and interested parties being given the opportunity to express their views. This meeting is being broadcast live from the city's website, and there is a link on the homepage that will take you directly to the meeting. At this public hearing, any person who believes that their interest in property is affected by the proposed bylaws shall be given an opportunity to be heard. No one will be or should feel discouraged or prevented from making their views known. However, it is important that all who speak at this meeting restrict their remarks to the matters contained in the bylaws, and it is my responsibility as chair of this meeting to ensure that all remarks are so restricted. Members of council may ask questions of you following your presentation. However, the main function of council members this evening is to listen to the views of the public and not to debate the merits of the proposed bylaw with the individual citizens. Those of you who wish to speak concerning the proposed application should, at the appropriate time, begin by clearly stating your name, address, and then give us the benefit of your views. You will be given 5 minutes for your presentation. I will call for presentations 3 times for each bylaw. Once the public hearing is closed, members of council cannot take any further input regarding the proposed application, and it will then deal with the report during the regular meeting of council held after the public hearing. The subject property is located at 1200 Kootenay Street North, and the purpose of the application is to request that the property be excluded from the Agricultural Land Reserve, which will facilitate the subdivision of the property. I call on any members of the public who are in the chamber tonight to speak first. If you wish to provide comments, please come to the podium, provide your name and address before giving your comments. Seeing none, I will now call first time for submissions.
So Mayor Price, we have no registered speakers, and we also have no last-minute attendees online.
Thank you, CEO Virchow. I will now call for a second time for submissions. I will now call a third and final time for submissions. Seeing or hearing none, I now close the public hearing for the proposed application to the ALR to exclude lands located at 1200 Kootenay Street North. Thank you very much. We have one bylaw for consideration tonight is the 5-year financial plan bylaw. I'll ask Director of Finance, Charlotte Osborne, to please speak to this item.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor and Council. So the object or the purpose of tonight's bylaw report is to present the 5-year financial plan 2024 to 2028, bylaw number 4136 2024 to Council for 3 readings. So in terms of a bit of background information, So staff began preparations for the 2024-2028 five-year financial plan early in the summer. Public budget meetings were held in November and December of 2023, following a summer filled with staff working on the plan. And in January of this year, as well as a meeting in January of this year, pardon me, where the departments presented detailed 2024 work plans and summarized major projects planned for 2024 through to 2028. Council reviewed the budget information and directed staff to make adjustments where they felt better alignment with their objectives could be achieved. Following the November 15th budget meeting, the city opened the public consultation process for the 2024-2025 five-year financial plan. To assist the public with their review, staff developed a one-page summary documenting highlighting key information. In addition, information was provided on the website that included all detailed budget documents presented to council at the November 2023 meetings. The public was invited to submit their comments in writing. There was no prescribed format for those comments, and the deadline for the submissions was December 1st, 2023 at 4 o'clock. A total of 36 submissions were received. These submissions were summarized and brought forward to council for consideration at the December 13th special meeting. At the special meeting of council on January 10th, 2024, the proposed budget was finalized. The 2024 budget reflects a non-market change of $275,000. Non-market change values for 2025 through 2028 have been held at the estimated $275,000. The 2024 amount is subject to adjustment when the final revised roll is released by BC Assessment Authority at the end of March. The municipal tax levy for increase for 2024 is 8.32%, based on that non-market change value of $275,000. The projected tax levy increases for 2025 through 2028 are 8.56% in 2025, 7.19% in 2026, 4.71% in 2027, and 3.03% in 2028.
Thank you very much, Charlotte. Can I get a motion that council give first reading to the five-year financial plan 2024 to 2028 bylaw number 4136 2024? Mover Councillor Ray, Councillor Stetsky. Discussion. Councillor Graham.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Unfortunately, this will be the first time in a long time that I haven't supported a budget. I feel that the increase is going to create a substantial burden on the residents of Cranbrook and the business community that are already facing significant increases in times of uncertainty. I understand that there are increased costs, as so does everybody else in the community, but sometimes you have to tighten the belt. So I am not supporting this.
Thank you. Further? Councillor Passett.
Thank you, Your Worship. I share Councillor Graham's concerns. And I mean, a decision was made by this council ahead of the budget process to direct staff to bring forth a budget that was business as usual. And I was concerned at that point because I didn't think we were really in a position to be business as usual. But that is, you know, what the direction was. And so staff proceeded accordingly. It's one thing to have 8.32% tax increase this year, but I'm very concerned about heading forward as we continue along this line at 8.56 and then 7.19, and it just goes on. And I don't think we can just continue on with business as usual. So I do think that heading forward, we need to send a clear message that we have to change things. And from what I've been told, at least from what I understand, from what I've been told, that most of our tax increase is the result of, you know, wage increases to WCB, and it's very much based on staffing. And I've been a part of this council for, you know, the last 2 terms, and we approve staffing increases. But part of that was with the understanding that we were looking at increases in development and that this would offset this. And we're seeing that isn't so. We didn't continue along the trajectory of more development. And so as a result, the taxpayers are bearing the burden. So, I mean, at this point, I'm conflicted. I sat through the budget process. We tried to push back where we could to decrease costs, but there really wasn't a lot of opportunity to do that. And so here we are at 8.32. I would have liked to have seen us around the 6% mark. I mean, that's still an increase. So I would say maybe I reluctantly agree or I disagree on principle. I certainly, we can't go forward this way. And so I think at this point, I don't think it matters if I disagree at this point and vote against the budget. But we can't go on this way. And we need to tell the public we're not going to go on this way. And so I would hope that this council feels that way. I mean, there were two of us that voted against going ahead with a business as usual budget. The rest voted in favor of that. I would hope that in future that won't be the case. But I mean, I only control one vote. So I reluctantly will vote in favor of this at this time. But for whatever that's worth.
Thank you for that. Councillor Peabody.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to thank Councillor Blissett for saying what you said. I think you share my sentiment and you put it into much better words than what I could. So I appreciate that. And I was one of the ones that voted in favor of, keeping things as business as usual. And it's interesting going through the process of doing that and seeing, what that turns into. And what that turns into is an 8.32% tax increase. There's a lot of positions over the last 6 years that we've been on council that we've approved, new positions, and it's a lot of those positions were created to manage the changing community that we have. Bylaw has changed dramatically from what it was, 3 years ago, if not 5 years ago. And many of our other departments we're doing what we can to manage the demand that our municipality has. And I think we're doing the best that we can to do that. But we can only afford to do so much. And I think what we're starting to see now is probably the limit of what our community can actually afford to do. And now we might have to start saying, okay, what's necessary and what's a privilege? And I think over the next year or two, we'll be focusing on that quite seriously.
Councillor Popov.
Thank you, Mayor. Echo everyone's comments. Having all of us sitting through and doing the line by lines, it was really a challenge to say, cut that, because all of those are crucial to the operations and asset management and running of the city, plus all the underside that makes any organization or household work. And we're just caught up in these inflationary times, as is every municipality, as is every person paying for the groceries. On top of what we need to look at for consideration to levels and reductions and services, maybe the flip side is back a few years ago, we did bring in more major housing. We did bring in some major new business startups, and those did what I call broaden the tax base. So we can cut, and at the same time, we need to look at how do we broaden our tax base, more housing, more business into our communities, and those will have huge benefits to all of the community if we can also broaden our tax base. And going forward, That's, I think, the other big part of the strategy is broadening our tax base so that we all can balance out the share of what the burden is for city taxes.
Thank you. Councillor Setsky, then Councillor Ray.
Yeah, I think it's been interesting to look across the country and see what's happening with property taxes. And when you look at it, virtually every community is facing challenges around decreasing reserves that, of course, we need those, particularly when emergency situations come in. Increasing concerns about aging infrastructure, and those are going to be with us for quite a long time. And inflation added on top of that. As some of you that follow the news will know, places like Toronto are looking anywhere from 10 to 16%. Osoyoos was 37% tax increases, and they're still trying to figure out what to do there. So it's high, and I agree with a number of the comments that have been made, and I think we really need to look hard at next year's budget numbers. But we've all had an opportunity over the last few months to look at the composition of this 8.32% and to make comments, vote on individual items along the way. And so I'm definitely going to vote to support this budget as it's proposed now, and we will deal with next year's budget going forward. But it's not fun. It's not good. It's not pleasant to be in this position as a city councillor, but I absolutely understand how we got to 8.32%. And when you look across Canada, the situation in a number of communities, of course, is much worse. So misery loves company. We've got people across the country that are enjoying our company.
Thank you, Councillor Ray.
Thank you, Mayor. So certainly a challenging process, as others have noted. Absolutely agree with that. I think it is important that we consider the language that we use. Language is powerful. So to use the term business as usual is a pretty loaded term. I would suggest a more accurate terminology would be maintaining current service levels. So that, I believe, was the intent of the motion that was passed by this council. And within that maintaining current service levels, I'd like to thank management and staff for seeking efficiencies as they could within those service levels. I firmly believe our team is very aware of the need to seek efficiencies where we can and appreciate the work that's gone into that in the face, as has been noted, of high inflation, right? Those costs affect the city as they do individuals or businesses. Along with choosing our words carefully, and I would say framing it as maintaining current service levels, I'd also ask that we keep good governance in mind and that it was a council motion. And when we make a council motion, that we then speak with one voice. That is a key aspect of good governance. And then moving forward with future budget processes, there will be additional council decisions. But part of good governance is when council makes a decision, we then speak with one voice. In terms of where we are with our tax increase, absolutely. We would all love to have a lower tax increase and be able to maintain current service levels. And that is challenging, which has brought us to where we are now. As has been alluded to, when we look across the country, I think there's been challenges with current councils as we look back decades to previous councils that, of course, previous councils also wanted to keep taxes low. And part of that may have been delaying long-term asset management projects, which are expensive. So if we don't have to do it, let's delay it and let's keep our taxes lower. But unfortunately, now we've hit a bit of a perfect storm across the country. Some major asset management projects have been delayed, plus now inflation. So gosh, some of these things, I'm sure in many, many communities, we wish we would have done 10, 20 years ago when it really would have been cheaper. But here we are now, and that's, the situation we've inherited. Past councils, again, in many communities may have spent reserves for some of those big projects to also keep taxes down. And again, we've now inherited the situation where we don't have the luxury of big reserves and we have to look at taxes. So previous councils may have had the luxury of, in some ways, keeping taxes a bit artificially low, and we do not have that luxury. So I certainly anticipate future discussions in terms of service levels and looking at those with fresh eyes for future budgets. But I appreciate all the work that collectively has gone into this budget process, and I will be voting in favor.
Thank you. I'll be voting in favor of this. We've been involved in the budget process since last summer. We've got up till the end of February, to have it fully approved, to the province. If we're going to start all over again, make no mistake, we'll never get it completed by the end of February. So we have what we have. I acknowledge staff. I think at one point in time, they were dealing with between 12 and 13%. So between staff and council, they've carved this down to the current rate. So I think that's commendable. And it's not just this year for this council. If we think this year is a challenge, the rest of our term is going to be a challenge. If you look at the numbers going forward, and we always know those preliminary numbers, are somewhat low by the time you get into the subsequent years. So, we're tasked with this for the next 3 years. Certainly, we know, and it's been mentioned, across Canada, and every mayor is saying it, the cost of providing services are outpacing our ability to generate revenues. We're extremely limited. It's taxation, or you're going to pay for services, or you're going to cut services. I think it's certainly beyond staffing. You're going to cut a few staff. It's quite insignificant, really, when you figure that, what are we at, almost 350 or 335 or something is going to be a 333,000 now is going to be 1% of our tax levy. So, looking at that tonight, we could sit here and or we could meet next week and yeah, we could cut this down. We could shave this down really fast. We can get rid of the 1% dedicated road tax. We did that last year, okay, to maintain that. In hindsight, some say maybe you shouldn't have. It doesn't matter. We know we got our road networks and we got unusual geological conditions in the Cranbrook area that we need an ongoing program. That program started at 200, or I think around 180 to 200 and some $1,000 year one. Charlotte, real quick, what's the annual commitment now? Ballpark.
About 300, close to $4 million.
Almost $4 million into roads. You want to cut it? We can cut it. Going forward, the roads aren't going to improve by themselves. They're not going to get any better. We know they're going to deteriorate. So we could do that. We could cut 1% there. We could cut our bus service. We're losing almost 3% a year on the bus service, okay? We're subsidizing the transit. We could cut that tomorrow. This is all about services. And this council will be the ones that will have to decide what it is. It's not going to be filtered down to staff when we're making these types of decisions. Certainly user fees. We're subsidizing a lot of local sports in this town for our youth. You want to quit subsidizing, youth sports? I can guarantee you we can save hundreds and hundreds, let's be honest, millions of dollars, okay? And one thing we need to do is we need to look at revenues, where we're going to get additional revenues. And I fully support, what the two councilors are opposed to this tonight. We do need to engage with the regional district in a cost share. 20% of the users of our facilities are from the RDK, Area C, sorry, and 20% of our operational costs for just our fields and our buildings is going to be several $1 million, okay? Like, no, pardon me, tens of millions of dollars, tens, okay? So we get a piece of that. That's going to cut it down substantially. So, you know, but the thing we have to do, and Councillor Blissett, you're absolutely right. And we talked about this through our budget discussions is going forward. At the start of the year, we need to sit down and strategize now on how we're going to generate revenues and do a bit of a service review the CAO has undertaken. In fact, the CAO has started undertaking a service review. In some areas, he's completed in some areas. We're waiting on our recreational service review right now. They got delayed, but it's coming this year. So that's certainly going to help next year and next year's budget. So, you know, I don't think it's this budget this year is kind of the sky is falling. I mean, it's typical of what you're seeing right across Canada, so I'm supporting that. Anything further from council? All in favor? Opposed? Would you like that recorded, Councillor Graham? Councillor Graham is opposed. Can I get a motion that council gives second reading to 5-year financial plan 2024 to 2028, bylaw number 4136, 2024? Mover, please. Councillor Popoff, Councillor Stetsky, discussion. Councillor Graham.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. When I first sat around this table, 2015, our property tax revenue was approximately $23.5 million. And forecast into 2024, we're looking at $36.1 million. So in 9 years, we have seen a significant increase in revenue. A good chunk of that too is development. We had, whether you look at the Broad Street or some other commercial developments that have happened over the while, as well as some single family residential. And also there's tax increases in there. So it isn't that there's been no tax increases and there's been no revenue. $12 million is a significant amount, and $4 million of that is dedicated road tax. So if we look at that, that's about $8 million that is still coming into the city. So I think we have to be cognizant of that. And again, I was frustrated in the process that we did the budget, and that was fine. I was a dissenting vote on that process, and it's nothing against staff. Staff delivered a budget within the instruction, and it's a good job and a good budget with that process. But I think there needs to be a dramatic shift on how we are looking at exactly as you mentioned services, but also on the other hand, if we don't look at services, these are the tax increases we deal with. So on one hand, you can be like, oh, cut bus service and we'll save 3% or $3 million. Yeah, I think it's about 3 million, so not 3%. But to keep some of these services, it is, we're looking at technically we're looking at 30% over the next 5 years of tax increases. So there is a time where it needs to be discussed on where we're headed as a community and how we want to look at these challenges and look at the services that we provide. Some of the services, and I'm excited to see the recreation service review coming forward, because some of this stuff hasn't been discussed for 30 years. And sometimes a 30-year-old model just doesn't work with today. So again, there is money, there has been increases, and there has been development money coming into the coffers. So I think that we need to work within the bounds that we have.
Thank you, Councillor Graham, and that is a good perspective. Thank you. Anything further? All in favor? Opposed? Councillor Graham is opposed. Can I get a motion that council give third reading to 5-year financial plan 2024 to 2028, bylaw number 4136, 2024? Mover, please. Councillor Stetsky, Councillor Peabody. Discussion. Councillor Graham.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I look at what we have set out here, and there isn't a lot of incentives for revenue generation. And I did speak to this a couple of years back when we did substantial increases to DCCs. And how is that going to incentivize the development community to build the necessary homes that we need here, whether it's single family, whether it's low income, whether it's fourplexes. We need to be cognizant that just because next door might have done a tax increase or down the road has higher DCCs, We don't necessarily need to keep up with other municipalities. We can work on creating our own destiny here. And I don't like to use that as a justification of tax increase. It's like, no, Cranbrook can set a trend. We don't necessarily need to be following X community because they have increased their taxes. And I think those are certain things that we can look at to increase development, because in this time, every community in the province needs housing, needs low income housing. And how are we going to set ourselves apart to catch that developer or that group that provides that? Why are they going to pick Cranbrook? Because there's a shortage of builders and there's a mountain of opportunity in housing. So how are we going to have that edge to catch those people? And I think, again, those are conversations that we need to have throughout this year into the next budget process on how can we be the person or the community that's getting 60 unit buildings done because of what we're able to provide, and the cost of living here is affordable and the cost of development here is affordable. And now it's not saying that it all needs to be borne on the taxpayer to provide incentives, but I think that we need to have some meaningful discussion around that, because really, at the end of the day, there's only one taxpayer, and the taxpayer gets hit federally, provincially, regionally, hospital district, right down to municipality, right down to sales tax, right down to carbon tax, years tax. And from what I'm hearing out there, the well's almost dry.
Thank you for that, Councillor Graham. You know, I certainly agree with you in part on that. And, you know, yeah, we can be standalone, but there are, I think, certain conditions that exist that, you know, we do have to look at our neighbors and whatnot to a certain extent. You know, one thing that's going to dictate a lot of things as well is the CPI, and we know that. But we also know that the CPI is for basically a basket of household goods. A corporation like the city of Cranbrook, our goods are not on the household scale. Our goods are commercial and industrial scale. And we're saying that it's like buying a light appliance compared to an industrial part. You're talking 10 to 20 times the difference. And also what we're seeing is we saw an increase in pricing on the residential domestic type level. What you're seeing there is really so minute compared to what you're seeing on the industrial scale. We saw equipment in the last year. Our last price a year and a half ago was $500,000, and the new price was somewhere around $1 million. That quick, pretty substantial. You know what? When we are sitting at 1% of our tax levy is $300,000. That's significant, and that's we can look at the guys next door too. You can go up the valley and you can, Fernie, Sparwood, Elkford. It's really unfair to even try to compare with them. They are receiving payments from tech. We don't see that. And you're absolutely right, Councillor Popoff. You know, we've got a residential tax base, you know, and a small commercial tax base. And again, that goes back to Councillor Graham. We've got to look at ways that, you know, it's generating bigger revenues. You know, it's very hard to survive and have the luxuries that they have, say, in Calgary, and you want all those services and amenities in Cranbrook when you haven't got a realistic tax base comparison. So, you know, and that's really difficult. And you know what, like, again, I'll go back to staff. I commend our finance staff for dealing with the tax base that we have right now. I think this is an extremely good budget. Thank you. Anything further? All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Councillor Graham is opposed. Thank you. Next item for consideration is a resolution from Councillor Graham regarding homeless encampment costs. Councillor Graham, would you like to read your motion?
Yep, you bet. Here, I'm just.
So I can read it if you don't have it?
I can read it out. It's fine.
Oh, you go ahead. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, so I've made a notice of motion at a couple councils ago. And so the motion reads as, whereas the province of BC through BC Housing is responsible for providing supportive housing and shelters for the homeless population. And whereas in light of the significant health and safety risks posed by encampments, local governments across the province are bearing significant unplanned costs to manage them, as the province has not deployed enough resources to support the homeless population. Therefore, be it resolved that the city of Cranbrook bill the provincial government for the costs incurred for the resources to deal with the encampments and the homeless population, as they have left this city of Cranbrook taxpayer the burden for these costs.
Thank you for that. A seconder, please. Councillor Popoff, I'll open that up to discussion. Councillor Graham.
Yeah, thank you. And the rationale behind this is quite simple. Is the province has a duty to provide the resources necessary for the population and for the unhoused. So what we see is when they've rented the travel lodge, or they're working on creating shelter or providing space, they're paying for that. And when the space is full, now we have people that are out in a tent that are, again, they're costing us money with bylaw, with fire and emergency services, and with having to go up and check on these encampments. What I look at is when the province or BC Housing and the outreach people, they go to the travel lodge gets paid for that space, and they get paid. The garbage is taken out. It's dealt with. It's covered in the cost of the rental of that facility. As when it's not, we bear that cost. So I think it's a fair ask to say there are costs incurred here that we need to deal with, and it shouldn't be on the taxpayer to deal with it. It should be on BC Housing or the provincial government.
Thank you very much. I have Councillor Ray.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate that Councillor Graham has raised this issue. Certainly, again, communities across BC are speaking about the downloading of costs that are coming to municipal governments on this issue. I'm just wondering from management, are there any legal issues we need to consider if this motion is passed? Are there any legal concerns? And would we benefit from any legal advice regarding this motion?
Mayor, through to Councillor Ray. No, I feel at this point it's just a discussion, and they can outline perhaps some of the examples that they've done in Prince George and Kelowna and other centers in terms of how those cities covered these costs and how BC Housing helped offset them.
Thank you, Paul. I got Councillor Sketchy, then Councillor Popoff.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I'm going to support the resolution on principle. I think we need to be respectful, though, in terms of how we approach BC Housing. We do still need them in our camp going forward. And I'm wondering whether this resolution is one that is shared through Federation of Canadian Municipalities. Is this something that FCM has taken on as one of their goals and objectives?
Thank you. Councillor Popoff.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. The language in Councillor Graham's uses the word encampment, so I'm taking that to equal. In our bylaw, we don't use the word encampments. We use some more language about the homeless people tenting. So I think we're okay with that understanding. And then secondly, if we do this, this will be a public document. So as a result, I think the public, our city public, would also be interested and maybe shocked by just what is that dollar value that the city taxpayer is burdening to provide these services. So that should also be published.
Thank you. Councillor Peabody.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I think it'd be fantastic if we can send the province a bill for our expenses we've incurred and have them pay for it. I'm curious what the likelihood is that if we sent the province a bill that they're not expecting, what's the likelihood that they would actually pay for our expenses? Would we say 0? Slim to none? And then my other question would be, how much time would we expect staff to spend on this in order to figure out the amount of expenses incurred with the homeless situation in Cranbrook?
Go ahead.
Okay. So your mayor through to Councillor Peabody, pulling together the numbers won't take us long, and I've already started the discussions with BC Housing. So they have advanced a lot of this, and so they're preparing a statement as well, and we can go from there.
Perfect. Yeah, I think for me, the purpose of this is to send a message. The chance of us getting our expenses covered, I would say would be slim to none. If it happens, fantastic. But I will vote in favor of this in order to send the province a message that our municipality, as well as other municipalities throughout BC, are experiencing costs like never before. And I think us as well as other people, we need support in how those costs are covered.
Thank you. I'll make a quick comment and then go back to Councillor Graham. Certainly, I thank Councillor Graham for bringing this motion forward. It is frustration in a community size of Cranbrook, and certainly, how we're located. Really, we are doing more than taking care of Cranbrook's homeless. If when this whole thing started, they were somehow identified as long-term Cranbrook residents, we could better handle it. But we know we're a regional service center, and all the the mental health and the drug support services are in Cranbrook. So we know we're getting it from the region. So this is a regional problem, and for the province, expect the city to to pay the bill fully on that. I think it's unreasonable. Certainly, the regional district has stepped up and helped fund our coordinator position. So I thank the regional district again for that. We will go back to them this week to see if they're going to support us in year 2. And I'm very confident they are from the sentiment I'm getting at the regional district. They see the value in the program. But certainly, I'd like to track all costs and send it. Is the province going to pay? Well, you know what? Nothing ventured, nothing gained. And at the very least, we're sending them a message that we're concerned about this. If we don't, they make them aware that we have concerns and that we can't afford to continue doing this. We don't have an argument, do we, going forward? So I think this is a very good first step. So back to you, Councillor Graham.
Yeah, thank you. Just to pick up on what Councillor Stetsky was asking, at the UBCM level, there was a resolution passed last or at convention in regards to this and having the province pick up the tab. So I look at it as it's moving through the process. The UBCM executive hasn't started talking about this yet, but we will be as Bill 45 is coming through the process, and that kind of stems into Councillor Popoff's question about what we consider an encampment. With Bill 45, a single tent is considered an encampment. So that's why I use that language on that. And what I look at it too is, will the province pay us? Probably not. But the point is to put pressure on to show that we need to have housing built. We need 3 years, 4 years to wait for a shelter, and we need more than just those 39 beds. And it just shows the true cost of what it is to a community. And our cost will be nothing compared to what Kelowna or Vancouver or Prince George is paying. But again, it's significant to Cranbrook. It's significant to our taxpayers. So I think it's important to send that out and to track the cost, so we have some hard data. Like our bylaw. How much time do we actually do bylaw, and we're chasing cats? We're not. We're dealing with the homeless encampments and we're dealing with that, and we're not actually doing some of the other bylaw work because it's tying that up. So I think it's important to capture that and to show what the cost is to municipality and what we're dealing with right now. So,
thank you. Further, Councillor Popoff.
Thank you, Mayor. So just for clarification, the tracking we're going to do, does it also include tracking city costs related to mental health and drug overdose events? Is that part of yours, Councillor Graham?
No, well, no, my cost tracking was more about the garbage, the time to go up there, and we're doing, the drive-throughs, that kind of thing, we can put a real tangible,
Okay.
because it's hard to track beyond that.
Thank you. That was just for clarification.
Thank you. I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Thanks. Great discussion. Next up, the report is from the mayor's office regarding appointments to the Board of Variance Committee for 2024. Can I get a motion that council appoint Bert Vanderlist to the Board of Variance as a representative of the public at large for a 3-year term expiring at the organizational meeting of council in December 2026, and further, that council appoint Maureen Rockwood to the Board of Variance as a representative of the public at large for a 3-year term expiring at the organizational meeting of council in December 2026. Mover, please. Councillor Ray, Councillor Peabody. Discussion? All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. The next report is from Engineering Development Services Department regarding an application for exclusion from the ALR. I'll ask Rob Vague, please, to speak to this item. Thank you, Rob.
Hi, Mayor and Council. So this is I call it the final component to being able to submit the application to the Agricultural Land Commission for the exclusion property. So we are required to hold a public hearing as part of the process. And pending concurrence with the resolution, the application will be completed through their portal and submitted, and then the answer will rest with the provincial government and the ALC.
Thanks, Rob. Can I get a motion that, subject to council's consideration of public input received up to and including the public hearing of January 22nd, 2024, council authorize the application to be forwarded to the Agricultural Land Commission on behalf of the Christian and Missionary Alliance Canadian Pacific District to seek exclusion of the property legally described as Lot A, District Lot 25, Kootenay District Plan 13553, located at 1200 Kootenay Street North. Can I get a mover, please? Councillor Bissett, Councillor Peabody. Discussion. Councillor Stetsky.
Yeah, just quickly, Rob, can you just let people that might be watching know? I know there's concern anytime there's any suggestion of land coming out of the ALR, and I absolutely would share that concern. But in this case, it makes absolute sense.
Correct. I think with respect to this property specifically, it's clearly not agricultural, hasn't been for close to 50 years, and probably no intention of ever being agricultural. It's the church and the school. Unfortunately, they're just caught up with the regulations that were put in the 70s. And as noted in the report, when we were originally looking at the mapping, and I believe it was Councillor Graham had indicated that our lands and two were in the ALR. Through the subsequent review of the college, it turned out that those lands actually were out of the ALR. The mapping was incorrect. So this little donut is sitting here. That's the gist of this application. I mean, certainly we have other lands in the Agricultural Land Reserve within the community, not a lot, but we do have some. And those would all have to go through the same process and are all still subject to any approvals by the Agricultural Land Commission, as they kind of hold the trump card, so to speak, with their legislation. So.
Thanks for that explanation, Rob, and thanks for bringing that up, Councillor Stick. I think it's important that the public realizes we're not trying to expand the city boundaries out into the ALR. Thank you. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Thanks very much, Rob. The next report is from the IT department regarding the new artificial intelligence policy. I'll ask Leon to speak to this issue, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As directed by council, we have drafted and brought forward for approval a draft policy and procedure on generative artificial intelligence. This policy and procedure is written to provide authorized city staff and city representatives guidelines on the use of every system that meets the definition of generative artificial intelligence. Generative artificial intelligence, otherwise known as generative AI, is a subset of the traditional artificial intelligence. Unlike traditional AI that is based on predetermined rules, generative AI is a set of relatively new technologies that produce content based on user inputs. Tools such as Scribe or ChatGPT, built on this technology, leverages large volumes of data along with some machine learning techniques to generate content such as text, images, videos, and audio. As a city, we have shown that we value public service innovation to help us meet some of the needs of our residents. However, because the AI tools are rapidly evolving and are still subject to active research, the impact and potential usefulness, as well as their risks and dangers, are not fully understood. For these reasons, the outlined guidelines in the procedure seek to encourage responsible use and experimentation. This policy is our commitment to explore and evaluate the use of AI technologies to improve and advance some of our processes. We want to make sure we get the benefits from the tools while avoiding the negative impacts for the city and its constituents. Thank you.
Thank you, Leon. Can I get a motion that council approve the new generative AI policy number 40-904? Mover, please, Councillor Stetsky, Councillor Bissett. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Thanks, Leon.
Thank you.
Final report tonight is from the CEO's office regarding the RDK electoral area planning municipal participation agreement. I'll ask staff to speak to this. Mark, CFO Osborne.
Thank you, Mayor. So the purpose of the report is to seek council's approval to enter into the agreement with the regional district to allow the mayor and Councillor Graham to vote on planning issues surrounding Cranbrook, as well as any planning issues coming up at the regional district board. So the Local Government Act enables local governments or municipalities and regional districts to enter into agreements to share in the costs of services under Part 14, Planning and Land Use Management, which includes the right to vote on all matters, the right to participate on committees on all matters, and the right to receive meeting agendas and other background material in support. At the November 23rd meeting, the RDEK Board of Directors passed a resolution inviting Cranbrook to continue to fully participate at the Electoral Area Planning Service for an additional 5-year term at a requisition amount calculated on the basis of 25% of the converted value of the land and improvements for municipalities. Attached to this report is a letter from Sean Tomlin, CAO of the RDEC, to Council outlining the agreement. If Council chooses not to enter into the agreement, participation on the Electoral Area Planning Service will be terminated as of December 31st, 2023, and would mean that municipal directors will no longer be eligible to vote on Part 14 matters going forward. The existing agreement expired on December 31st, 2023. And in terms of a budgetary impact, so for the past 5 years in the requisition that we received from the regional district, part of that requisition has included $69,499 each year to participate in those planning activities. And this would represent about, at the time, it represented about 18% of the cost. And for the full 5 years, it was $69,499. And now under the new agreement, the proposed contribution is $100,578, representing approximately 9% of the cost of the regional district's planning service. That's it.
Thank you, Charlotte. Okay, I'm going to read a motion here. Can I get a motion that council approve? Yeah, the city entering into an agreement with the regional district of East Kootenay for cost sharing under the Local Government Act, Part 14, Services - Planning and Land Use Management for a 5-year term from January 1, 2024 to December 31, 2028. Get a mover, please. Councillor Ray. Councillor Peabody. Discussion. Councillor Bissett. Councillor Ray.
Thank you, Your Worship. So at the last meeting, this hadn't been approved. And so Mayor Price and I were not able to vote on just the planning decisions that were coming up at the meeting. And one of the things I'd like us to talk about as a council is some of those decisions really are important to Cranbrook and would be important to the city of Cranbrook residents, but some of them less so. And I would say that the ones we're most concerned about are those in Area C. And we could ask our staff to negotiate with the regional district for us to participate in planning decisions that relate to Area C. I know that in the past, some of the Elk Valley municipalities did not participate they didn't pay for the planning services, and so they weren't able to vote on that. They found it frustrating at times. I can see that. It's just at over $100,000. Those are significantly expensive votes. And I just wonder that we might not be better off to just look at planning decisions for Area C and how much that would cost our municipality. So I'd like people to think about that as we're considering this decision.
Thank you, Councillor Blissett. We go to Councillor Ray, Councillor Stetsky, then Councillor Graham, Councillor Papa.
Thank you, Mayor. Cranbrook is the largest urban center in the Kootenays. Of course, this is specific to the RDEK. I do feel it is important that we participate in these votes. I recognize that, perhaps many of the votes seem like, perhaps they wouldn't affect us that much. My concern is for the future, for the unknown, for the votes that may come up. We don't know what they may be. It might be something in the Elk Valley that in some fashion impacts Cranbrook. And I want Cranbrook to have a voice in those votes. And I believe it's important and it's worth it. We may think now, oh, there's nothing important, but we don't know what the future might bring. And I believe it's important for Cranbrook to have a voice.
Thank you, Councillor Stetsky.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. And I don't mean to put Rob on the spot, but the city of Cranbrook has historically voted against developments that or businesses, for example, occurring in a regional district, and absolutely right, Councillor Blissett, and primarily Area C. So at times, we've been pretty consistent about voting no on things that we think should be located in Cranbrook rather than just outside our boundary. But I'm curious as to what our success rate has been on convincing the RDEK when we had votes to change a path that they were already on. Sorry to put you on the spot. But
Yeah, through the mayor to Councillor Stetsky and council, I actually don't have those statistics. I can only speak anecdotally to some examples where I believe things have gone, I guess maybe not in favor of the applicant, but more along the lines of what the board voted. For example, that big development on New Lake area that would have seen 50+ acreages created. It's my understanding. I believe that one didn't move ahead at the regional district, and so we don't keep track of those statistics, and because it's the board as a whole that makes those decisions, and the two votes that we have, may or may not swing it. But in cases where it's important, certainly that was an example that was probably quite important to the city of Cranbrook. And there's going to be more coming. Certainly, the world is changing. There's always development pressures, and so that's sort of the high level of it. But unfortunately, I don't have specific which ones went in favor and which ones don't, because we just don't track that.
And I'm guilty as well. I sat on the board for 4 years, and I can't remember how frustrated I was or wasn't with some of those decisions. But I think in the end, for me, it's really important that we hear from our two RDEK reps and basically support what you are recommending in the end.
Thank you. Councillor Graham.
Yeah, thank you. I know this come up a while back as well around planning. I was on the board when the Elk Valley left, and then when we got new mayors, they came back in, and it seemed like to be more of a political stunt than anything else. But There's definitely pros and cons to being involved in planning. It is expensive. You know, you pay to vote, but on the other hand, you do get to speak to the development that's happening directly around Cranbrook. So what if you're not at the table, you could still speak to it. You can still come as a delegation. The city could still do a delegation and see if the board sides with that. But being involved in the conversation and being involved in a bit of the background and even outside of our area, looking at other developments that's happening. You know, the biggest part of planning is Windermere and around Invermere, but being able to maybe provide a bit of insight and context to it is also maybe beneficial to the region itself. So I as much as it is expensive, as much as I think the largest community in the regional district should be involved in planning, and that's my feeling.
Thank you very much. Councillor Popoff?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So for clarification, it's a 5-year term at $100,000 per year or $1,000 total? Charlotte.
Councillor Popoff through Mayor Price, $100,000 per year,
Talking about
$100,000.
$500,000 to participate in this exercise at the regional district table, of which we're the largest community in the East Kootenay, but yet we have 2 votes. So we're 2 votes out of 16 directors, and we do have the chance to, and I've sat at the table on occasion, so you do have the chance to be in that forum and give your opinions and the debate and the lobbying and everything else, but we're still 2 votes out of 16. I guess back to the 2 current directors on the regional district, are we getting our money's worth? And probably more importantly, are we getting value? If the and I know most of those planning decisions are not in Area C immediately around us. They're in the Elk Valley and the vast majority is up in the Invermere Valley. So today, not the future, but today, are we seeing value for our lobbying efforts, even though we only get 2 votes? And I've asked that to the 2 directors.
Thank you, Councillor Popoff. When I first saw the renewal come up, my immediate response was $100,000. That's it's getting pretty pricey for really for what we truly get out of it on an annual basis. And then what would that $100,000 do for us? That's another position in our planning department, so we could add resources, you know, to our community. But that being said, a couple of things I think we need to consider. Number one, I'm always a believer that you shouldn't be sitting at the table if you're not capable of making that final decision. You should never send somebody there that can't. And really, by not being able to vote, we are not capable of being part of that final decision. Secondly, I truly believe, as Councillor Statsky has said earlier, I think everybody at this table agrees, you know, that we do contribute to the regional district, and we support what they do, right? So we're supporting what they do, and we contribute input. So we, you know, we can say it. Really, this is demonstrating it. You know, I think too, longer term, this could implicate. It could have implications on the corporation. We've just gone through a couple of decisions up there where there was some things on the West Hill, and it was regarding water supplies and, you know, on development up there. That was defeated, and and it was, you know, quite a controversial topic there. But you know, our concern was that if they start developing too much, and we've got all these water issues now, they run out of water. Make no mistake, the city is going to be having to add services there, and half this discussion we had tonight, you know, we can't afford this, you know, we're struggling to afford the service we got. And that's part of our densification. You know, we can't start running out to pick up above Crossroads and these places like that, New Lake Road. I mean, look at the cost of that. So, you know, we need to have a voice there, and we will have some input on perhaps limiting that growth out there until it's responsible enough that they can, they have the capacity to support it. So that could come back and bite us in time, you see. So, nothing to be worse if we bought out of this and we're not around 10 years from now, all of a sudden there's something's happened up there that, too bad, Cranbrook, you weren't at the table to vote for it. And now we've got this situation and, the province will order us to provide services out there. Whew, and we can't afford to do that. So, for the $100, I guess, and then I'll go back again and I'm fine to support them. I think maybe if we demonstrate to the regional district that we truly do support them, they may come around and kind of help us out again with the cost sharing on our recreational services. You can't expect them to cooperate if we're not cooperating as well. Back to Councillor Bissett, then to Councillor Stetsky.
I mean, I agree. I have gone back and forth on this, and that's why I sort of came up with that compromise of really just looking at Area C. But as Councillor Ray pointed out, you can't predict the future. And it's hard to make a decision today about not voting on some pretty hot topics that could come up in the future. So that's why I did come up with the idea about Area C. I'm fine with us continuing our participation there. I am concerned about the escalating costs, but then I guess we'll deal with that at regional district budget time in February. So.
Thank you. I will go to Councillor Peabody first. She hasn't spoken. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, the cost has increased 44% since the last time. And I guess I wonder if there's any opportunity here for the city to come back to the RDK and be like, yes, we want to participate, but a 44% increase is just too much. Is there a more reasonable number that we can come into agreement with here? I don't know.
I guess, Charlotte, it's what type of scale do they use to cost this? So we may have no choice in that, I think.
Well, they're using our a converted value, a converted version of our assessed value.
Yeah.
So that's what, it's based on something, super objective like the assessed value. And they're saying that that's, it's the growth in Cranbrook, it's the growth of the service. That's how they're justifying the increase. Sean Tomlin's letter, he does talk about the rationale behind the increase.
Mm-hmm.
So, we were paying $66 representing 8% of the cost. And now we're paying $100,000 representing a slightly higher percentage, 1% of their cost. So their costs have gone up as well, just like ours have. So, but we're paying 8% more, or 1% more of their costs than we were in the past. And their position is that because of the growth of our assessed value and, the growth around Cranbrook, that's why they landed on the 9%.
Yeah, I think my opinion here is with the growth, we've seen significant growth with our expenses, which means that our community has less money to put towards things like this. So I think our argument going back to them is our budget is a lot tighter than it's ever been. We don't have an extra 44% to put towards this. Is there a way that we can come back to a number that's closer to what we were paying for the last 5 years?
Thank you, Councillor Stetsky.
Related to that, half an hour ago, we all shared our concerns with 8.32%. I'm not sure whether this has been factored into that 8.32 or this is an additional cost.
Councillor Stetsky through Mayor Price, this would be on top of. This would make up the RDEK requisition, a piece of the RDEK requisition. So it is not part of the 8.32%. It is, the 8.32% is general municipal taxes only. This is, we collect taxes for the school, and RDEK, the hospital district, and a couple of other smaller amounts.
Go ahead, Councillor Stetsky.
I'm sorry, so how do we pay for the increase then? Where does it come from?
Councillor Stetsky, through Mayor Price, it is embedded. It is part of our tax rate bylaw but it is, so I have to set a rate for the regional district requisition. And it's a rate that's calculated separately from the municipal tax rate. So we collect it and then we forward it, the money to the regional district.
Good. Further? All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. One opposed? Would you like that recorded, Councilor Beatty? Yeah, Councilor Peabody is opposed. Next items up tonight are administrative updates from various departments. Is Paul here? Yeah. I'll ask Paul to speak to the update from the Building and Bylaw Services regarding 22 Briar Avenue. Thanks, Rob.
So in general, we're still working on what to do with the debris left over from the demolition of Knights Hall. We've had numerous discussions with our legal counsel. We have also met with other developers and other buyers, and we're also just going to be meeting with the owners this week just to continue our discussions.
Thank you. Questions, comments, Councillor Popoff?
Thanks, Mayor. So Paul, we currently have a hazardous abatement order on this private property, something to that effect, to clean up the debris from the fire.
So your mayor through to Councillor Popoff, I think what you're asking is have we done a hazmat assessment on the space?
We have an order to this property owner to clean up the remains of the fire debris.
No, we don't.
Okay, and yet we're still pursuing legal avenues to understand what's necessary to clean it up. So does that fall back to our order that Chief Driver did to order it down and order it cleaned up, that we now are continuing legally with the owner to tell them what they have to do, and if not, we're going to do it and apply it to their taxes? That's part of that package?
Yes, through our legal counsel, we have prepared our remedial action order.
Thank you.
But we have not brought that forward at this point until we speak with the owners.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anything further, Council? Okay. Thanks, Paul. Next up, we have Mike from Engineering and Development Services.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This administrative update is fairly long, so I won't get into all the details. I'm just going to cover a little bit what the rationale is behind it, and then just get into a few of the highlights, just in respect of everybody's time here. So further down in the administrative update, staff have attached a list of all of the current building permit processes, rezoning applications, development permits, and subdivision applications. You'll see that there's a substantial amount of work in the queue as far as waiting some packages. There's been quite a few permits issued and a lot of projects that are complete or underway. I think two of the highlights that we have from that perspective is we're quite optimistic that we'll be working with one development group that's working on two multifamily units, apartment buildings, and we're hoping to be able to issue some building permits very soon to get those projects underway. That'd be 75 units on Kootenai Street for a 5-story building, and 71 units on 4th Street South for a 6-story unit. So we're hoping that those two projects, we've been working really diligently with those developers to make sure any of the offsite works, especially on the 4th Street project, trying to coincide the upgrades that we did to alleviate any unnecessary offsite upgrades that would have had to been done reactively. So some of those proactive infrastructure investments really helped set the table for getting these developments moving forward. And then we've got a bit of an update there showing just some of the quarterly values and some of the major quarterly projects that have been underway. And that's been provided by our building officials. The notable projects that have wrapped up and have occupancy granted in 2023 do include the new Toyota dealership, New Runners RV, Pizza, the City Hall renovations, Cranbrook Vision Care, and the Beaumont Stairs. You can see a note further in the report that we are developing and we're sort of in the later stages of our new online permitting software. And aside from just being able to administratively undertake the permitting process, we really want to be able to use that software to be able to share this information more transparently, more openly, and more clearly with council and the public. And that would involve, using some of these open and available mapping services that some other communities are using, where you can click on a map of the city of Cranbrook, and if there's an existing application or a permit that's in place, the public can find out what's happening next door, what's happening down the street. I know there's a lot of inquiries that often happen to council and to staff, what's going on there. So we're looking at being able to provide that information and looking at any policies that we want to enact as we look at different legislation and zoning bylaws to see how we can better proactively inform the public of what's going on in our neighborhood and in our community. Moving along, a brief update on the Shadow Mountain Sanitary Sewer Servicing Project. The project did reach substantial completion on January 5th, 2024. All the major works are complete. At this point in time, the system is running. It's running in a bit more of a manual mode, so all of the sewage is going into the storage tanks and the lift stations, and it is being pumped into the lagoons. So that's a big positive. No longer the trucking operation that was happening before. Then we're just finishing up a few details with testing the system, a couple parts coming in to automate and test to make sure this thing's sort of running on its own without some of the manual work that is happening at this point in time. And then the Lagoons Phase 2 pipeline construction, that project has started. Copcan Civil was the successful contractor on that project. They have mobilized to the site. A short delay in getting things started with the cold weather snap that we've had, but they are looking at getting some of the work started with some materials arriving and looking at actually starting the construction in the coming days and weeks.
Thank you, Mike. Council, any questions or comments for Mike? No? Thank you very much, Mike. Final update is from Public Works Department. I'll ask Tony online. Yeah, Tony, to speak to this item, please.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Despite facing extreme weather, the memorial project continues to push forward with the excavation of multiple foundations and cutting of beams to fit the new steel structures. The coordinated efforts of crews on both sides of the building show commitment to completing the project efficiently. The successful salvage of the worst glulam beams is a positive outcome, which will effectively reduce the risk of project cost overrun and any delays. More great news is the startup of the ice plant. So staff have now begun building the ice surface, and soon we'll be able to start scheduling some ice time in the Kingsman Arena. So the project remains on schedule and still under the allotted budget. Thank
you, Tony. Councilor Peabody.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for the good news item here, Tony. Just curious, I know Public Works has implemented like a more aggressive snowplow program for 2023. Just want to get your 2 cents on how it's going so far this winter.
Yeah, I think it is going really well. This last snow event was a little bit more of a challenge because it was almost like having two snow events with the snow accumulation followed by the compaction and then it melting over the last number of days. So as you can see, we're just getting down to the pavement and yeah, the weekend and evening services have definitely shown some improvement.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Further, Council? Thanks, Tony.
Thank you.
We have a few pieces of correspondence tonight. The first one from the Ministry of Forests regarding the aerial spray program. This is for information only. Okay, thank you. Second item of correspondence to Rob Gay at the Regional District of Kootenay regarding support for the social development position. I think before we go with the motion, we have Marcel, our social development coordinator. Marcel's here. Marcel, maybe you bring us a little bit of an update and an overview of what's going on.
Like you said, I think this is our request to RDK for our year 2 of funding for the social development program. It's been a busy 9 months, I have to say. Lots of learning and lots of great things have come out of it. I think the feedback from city and from supports and services in the communities so far have been really positive. I did attach a summary that I will be presenting to the RDK in February. I don't know that most of this is quite known to the council here because we went through it, but just a couple of things over the last little while. This is our first year of having an extreme weather community plan. It was very rigorously tested in the last little week with the weather we had, and we had glowing reviews all the way around from it. Everything seemed to work. And anybody who wanted warm space and or food through that cold weather was able to access it quite easily. I did sit on a board for the municipalities across the province for other people in the same sort of role as me and it was really nice to hear the Cranbrook's come together because there's many who didn't and many who had some losses in their communities and stuff. So this was great to hear. Going forward, like I said, I guess the last year was really, I started and really spent a lot of time at the beginning just kind of figuring out what social assets Cranbrook had, what were the challenges, barriers that the city was facing, spending a lot of time with bylaw out at the encampments, trying to learn from the people living there how they become homeless, what they wanted and needed to get back into the community and back into housing. Met with a lot of different social programs, worked with the chamber on creating a survey for business communities to find out what their biggest concerns are and what their first and priorities solutions would be. Did a lot of presentations to different areas in town just on what the program was, what social development, and then got feedback from them on what that might look like. We started the situation table, which I'm sure the council is aware, and by now that's been going for about 6 weeks, and we can see the benefits out of collaborative practice that it's happening at that table. We're still in the growing stage, so we're still trying to get people comfortable with bringing the referrals forward. But outside of that, the conversations and the collaborations and the results of that are positive, and it also, again, will give us evidence-based data for later on for making decisions on where are the gaps in our community and where further funding or less funding or something could be spent. And then working the last little while, just been concentrating on researching what other municipalities are doing, what's working for other communities, what has been tried and failed, so we're not continually reinventing the wheel. And hopefully moving forward in this next little while with really defining a framework for Cranbrook in itself of what social development means to Cranbrook, what Mayor and Council would like to see come out of the social development program, what the community would like to see, and of course with all the community partners, and just really bringing some clarity and some direction to the role that benefits not only those that are really struggling or vulnerable populations, but the community at large and the municipality on a whole. And I think that's kind of the sum up for now.
Thank you very much for that. Can I get a motion that council approve release of the letter to Rob Gay, Regional District of East Kootenay, requesting funding for year 2 of the social development position? Mover, Councillor Ray, Councillor Blissett. Discussion? All in favor? That's approved. Thank you very much. And thank you, Marcel. I can tell you from personal experience, you're making a significant difference out there. From from what I understand, talking to people that have been involved the last 2 years with the, the cold nights and whatnot with the shelters, emergency shelters. We saw in the past, there was a little criticism here and there was some issues and whatnot. I have not heard one word of criticism this year. Everybody I've spoken to felt it just ran so smoothly and there was not one issue at all. So that's good on you and the other organizations. Let's be honest, everybody stepped up to the plate. And I think, there wasn't a whole lot of silos this year involved, right? So you know what, it's a big first step, is getting that coordination and it's tough. Everybody's got their own responsibilities and their own programs and yeah, so you're doing an excellent job. I'm just so happy that things are going so good. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much.
Next item is a letter from Joe Tank at School District Number 5 regarding a request for assistance in installing signs at the local schools. Do we want to receive information or do we want to make a motion on this? I'll give you maybe a proposed motion. Oh, sorry, receive for information. Okay, are we good with that then? There was a financial consideration in that, right? Okay, I'm fine. Is Councilor, you okay with receive for information? Discussion? Councilor Graham first and Councilor Popoff.
Yeah, it's an information piece. If the school district wants to put lights in, they can put them in and get by both. They're capable of raising the funds to do that.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Popoff.
Yes, thank you. So they're asking us, I believe, to do the work for them. So that means there's finances involved. Therefore, we would need a motion on that. So if we go with what Councilor Graham's saying, we receive it for information and we don't touch it. If what I hear you suggesting, Mr. Mayor, where there is some financial implications involved and therefore we need to do a motion on it. So which way is it? Are we doing nothing on it and just taking it as information, or do we want to actually help them install it?
Okay, thank you for that. Councilor Ray?
Thank you, Mayor. In order for me to vote on a motion, I would need to know what the costs are, how much are the posts, what kind of hours are we looking at? So we don't have that information tonight. So can we receive for information and refer to staff? We don't have the information we need, in my opinion, to make a financial decision on this.
Yeah, I think CEO Virtual could speak to that.
I'd just like to say thanks to the staff for pulling this together in preparation for that question. So we do have the numbers.
Yeah.
So 2024 and 2025 total costs for the work that's requested would be $9,592, including wages, labor, everything. Everything. Yeah.
So around 10,000 this year, 10,000 the following year for 2 schools. Councilor Stetsky.
Yeah, does this mirror past practice or is this a new request? I'm just not sure whether the city has always done this for the school board.
And that question, I don't know the answer to. We do maintain signage. This is a little bit over and above regular. And is there?
Can't hear.
Because over here, my voice is really loud. Okay. So yeah, I can't answer the past practices. It's just that we do maintain signage around the schools like we typically do. And then, since then there's been some of the work with the speed reader boards and whatnot, but I don't know the answer to this type of work.
Council, through Mayor Price, I'm not aware of us having done something like this before. That doesn't mean we haven't.
We'll just keep going down the line here. So we have installed these in the past. So there was a previous request several years ago. The boards at the school zone for Mount Baker on 14th and also for Amy Woodland on 11th Avenue were installed by the city. That was with the understanding that the school district would upload the school calendar into those items because they're programmed to only operate during in-session school days. So they do not operate after hours. They do not operate on non-instructional Fridays. So they're not flashing when they don't need to be flashing. When it comes to actually replacing any of the items on there, if they do break, we haven't run into that yet. I don't believe it was part of a previous understanding or agreement because they're only a few years old what the current items are. But I think that would be something that should be considered with any or not the city would be on the hook for replacing some of the more expensive components should be a consideration.
I'm wondering if perhaps Mr. Tank isn't thinking that these are not installed on school property, you know, they're installed on city property as well, outside of the school zone, so I don't know. Flavor? Somebody want to recommend the motion? Councilor Graham, no? Receive for information,
Yeah, I'm
and then,
happy to
we'll
receive
let
for
staff go
information.
back to the school board.
Zero
Okay.
interest in fun.
Okay, receive for information, everybody good with that?
And
Councilor Peabody, then Councilor.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, thank you. $9,500 is the cost, which I think is insignificant compared to what the effect that these signs do have in the school zone. So for me, I'd rather have the motion be voted on as far as whether we fund it or not, rather than receive for information.
Councilor Bissett.
But staff can go ahead and make a decision, a $10,000 decision without having to have a council motion, can't they?
Yes, thank you.
Yes, so if you receive for information, work out the details and then go ahead, that seems reasonable.
If council so directs, we can do that. Like that would be something, but if council would prefer just to receive it and not have any action, we certainly won't take action. We just need the signal from council.
Yeah. Councilor Papa.
Thank you, Mayor. So if it's on city land, I think we have some responsibility for making sure things are installed properly, securely, safely if it's on city land. So if that's the case, I'm okay with spending the $9,000. If it's on school district land, then I'm in favor of Councilor Graham's proposal. So city land, yes. School district, receive for information.
Thank you. So CO first, you'll take care of that. It's received for information.
That's correct. So we'll respond positively and
Thank you.
with the school district. Thank you.
Next item up is correspondence from Dave Baines, NWP Cole, regarding an open house in Cranbrook on February 13th. This item is being received for information. Final item is a letter from Doug McPhee from School District Number 5, which is a response to our letter of September 11th, 2023 regarding childcare in the city. This item is also being received for information. Okay. That brings us now to Mayor and Council reports and inquiries. Let's start down with Councilor Graham tonight.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple little highlights. It's been a busy few weeks on the UBCM. And the main reason is pulling together a housing forum, which we weren't intending to do, but with the passage of Bill 44 and the sweeping changes it's made throughout the province to local governments, we felt it was important to get the membership together as much as we could to hear how this affects positively and negatively the communities and ways that the UBCM organization can work with the province to provide some guidance to this legislation. So that will be taking place on February 13th and 14th in Vancouver. And we are aware of that it is short notice, but the sentiment is when the House sits again, there'll be more changes coming. So we want to try and get a good position moving forward so that we can work with the province proactively, not reactively like we have with Bill 44.
Thank you, Councilor Papa.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So the subject matter is childcare. We did in the previous pass some budget money and put out some proposals for the cities looking at some interest in creating childcare childcare properties and operating childcare properties here in Cranbrook. I don't need to know now, but maybe for next council meeting, could we have an update on what the status of that is going forward? It might be nothing at this point, but the clock is ticking on that. So information for next council would be appreciated.
Thank you, Councillor Ray.
Thank you. Just want to reiterate the positive feedback regarding the emergency cold response here in Cranbrook. It was so great to have that plan in place. It involved multiple agencies, people working really well together, and I think it was really seamless. So, thanks to the Anglican Church for being the overnight warming site. Thanks to the Alliance Church for stepping up and providing during the day coverage. I think that was over the weekend. Thanks to the library for continuing to do a great job. Western Financial was another option. Anchor staff did the staffing at the Anglican Church. And I'm sure there were members of both the Alliance and the Anglican Church who were involved in supporting as well. So it's just a great community effort and involved multiple groups working together so well to keep people safe. So well done, Cranbrook.
Thank you. Councillor Bassett.
Sorry, nothing to report.
Thank you. Councillor Peabody.
Thank you, Mayor. We passed over it pretty quickly, but just going back to one of the correspondence items about the spraying for spongy moth. I just think it might be prudent for the city to also probably put out some information about this onto our social media and let people know that there will be airplanes dropping a bacterium on our parks and our homes and our elementary schools. And just that there isn't a risk, but that they should be closing their windows that day. And, I feel that even though, Ministry of Forests is going to have mail outs for the people in the neighborhood, not everybody checks their mail, as we learned with the 12th Avenue expansion. And I think the more word that we can get out, the less backlash we're going to see about why didn't the city do anything to tell us about this.
Thank you. Councillor Popoff had a comment on that
Yes,
subject.
that's great idea, Councillor Peabody. As long as we're very clear that we're the messenger and we're in no way responsible for the actions or cautions or recommendations, and for further inquiries, contact the right appropriate agency. So as long as we're not the fall guy, I'm in favor.
Thank you. Councillor Stetsky.
Yeah, thank you. And I'll just start with a brief comment on the school district number 5 and their approach to childcare. I don't know how all these other communities and schools manage to do it, and whether school board number 5 is just more thorough when they're looking at these things or what, but I'm still a bit disappointed, I guess. And hopefully that does change, because we certainly need childcare, and it certainly should be located adjacent to schools or within schools as much as possible. One of the meetings I attended was the library board meeting, and we approved the 5-year plan. I suggested to the board they may want to come and make a presentation to council on the 5-year plan, so you may see an application. If not, I'll make sure that you all get copies of that 5-year plan. I wanted to talk a little bit and just to say thank you to the mayor for hosting the public meeting on what's sometimes called Southview or 11th Avenue, 12th Avenue. It was a really good meeting, and for me, it did exactly what public meetings are supposed to do. We heard from the citizens, and I learned a lot that night from the presentations that were made. It could have been a much less productive meeting, and I just want to thank you, Mayor, for hosting that and keeping it on track. It was a very good meeting, I thought. Lastly, if you, and you won't have a chance, but I'm not sure how many of you got to see JC Superstar, our local production at Key City Theatre. It was magnificent. As one of the people sitting beside me said, we are so fortunate in Cranbrook to have so many talented people that are willing to come and perform for us. It was just a marvelous evening. So thank you to Key City Theatre for putting on that play, and the performers who were just great.
Thank you. I just have two things. On the response for the to the 12th Avenue LAS petition closed today at 4:00 p.m. I'm just wondering if our city clerk has any sort of unofficial news. I know the people that were there were quite anxious to get a result. Can you form any impression of some kind of a result? Have we got all the early numbers that came in?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. The petition against was successful. We received more than 50% of the petitions against, representing more than 50% of the value of the land. So we will report that back at the February 5th meeting.
Thank you very much for that. So I'm just going to go on a little bit about that because as Councillor Stetsky said, you know, it was an open house, kind of a town hall meeting, and you know, and I don't want to keep going on about, but you know, this council has said right from day one, and everybody ran on some of the same merits, that we're open to transparency, openness, and public input, and we are there to listen to the public. And I know for a fact, because we did discuss some things after the meeting, we could take a few things from that meeting that we learned. And before I go on too far, I want to thank all of council for showing up. We had one council member that couldn't attend. That council member, we had just left budget meetings here. That council member had another Zoom meeting that he had to attend, or he had been there. So on that side of it, I think it was very important. And I think everybody in town understands how, you know, the controversy surrounding that particular zoning or that LAS. And, you know, I felt it was very important, as we all did, to support staff, and thank you very much for supporting staff. I want to thank our engineering and planning department, how they constructed that meeting. I think that probably 90% of their questions, the people's questions and concerns, were addressed through Curtis Penson's presentation. So thank you for that. Again, you know, when we go out to these things, we're there to listen. And quite frankly, you know, it doesn't matter how they want to put it to us, as long as it's respectful. You know, if they want to be personal with us, we're fine with that. And that's why we're there. And again, thank you, council. I think it's demonstrated that we're kind of true to our values and principles, you know, that we stated when we first came on to council. Secondly, we've got the committees struck for the homelessness task force and for the mayor's task force on housing. The homelessness task force will have its first meeting next Wednesday, January 31st. And I believe the first mayor's task force on housing is occurring the first or second week in February. So, yes, Councillor Stetsky.
Thank you, Mayor. Will the names of the groups participating in those committees be on our website?
I believe that they will get it on. I don't know if it's on there yet, but we will definitely have each of the committees with the names and their designations on the committee for sure. Yeah. Anything further, council? If I may get one. Nope. With that, I'll call for adjournment. Councillor Stetsky, Councillor Graham, all in favor? Adjourned. Thank you very much, guys. Good meeting.